Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Jimmie Nicol, the forgotten Beatle James George Nicol, better known as Jimmie Nicol, was born on August 3, 1939, in London, England. Though his name might not be immediately recognizable, Nicol's brief yet extraordinary brush with fame in 1964 made him a fascinating footnote in music history. For 10 whirlwind days, he lived the dream of millions, stepping in as the drummer for the Beatles at the height of Beatlemania. Early life and career beginnings before his moment in the spotlight. Jimmie Nicol was an accomplished and respected session drummer in the British music scene. He grew up in London and gravitated toward the skiffle and jazz movements of the 1950s. Inspired by drummers like Krupa and Buddy Rich, his early gigs were in local bands, and by the late 1950s he had established himself as a reliable session musician. Nicol's precision and swing earned him steady work with acts like Colin Hicks and his Cabin Boys, and he also played with Georgie Fame and the Blue Flames. He became known for his adaptability, capable of moving between jazz, pop, and R&B styles seamlessly. The Beatles' Call, a sudden twist of fate in June 1964. Just as the Beatles were about to embark on their first world tour, Ringo Starr fell ill with tonsillitis. The band faced a crisis. Their world tour was scheduled to begin in just a day. Their producer, George Martin, recommended Jimmie Nicol, who had recently played on an album of Beatles cover songs called Beatlemania. Because he already knew their material, Nicol was the perfect emergency replacement. On June 3, 1964, Nicol met the Beatles at Abbey Road Studios for a brief rehearsal. The next day, he was on a plane with John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison, heading to Copenhagen for his first concert as a Beatle. 10 days of fame from June 4 to June 15, 1964, Jimmie Nicol lived as a Beatle. He played shows in Denmark, the Netherlands, Hong Kong, and Australia, performing in front of frenzied crowds and surrounded by the chaos of Beatlemania. Despite the enormous pressure, he performed admirably, keeping the band's momentum alive during one of the most intense tours of their early career. Nicol received the same treatment as the rest of the band: tailored suits, screaming fans, and hotel rooms under siege. Yet he always remained aware that his role was temporary. Famously, when McCartney asked him how he was coping with the sudden fame, Nicol replied, "It's getting better." That phrase would later inspire the Beatles' 1967 song, Getting Better, from Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The sudden end on June 15, 1964, in Melbourne. Ringo Starr rejoined the group. Nicol quietly packed his bags, received a £500 bonus, and was given a gold watch inscribed with, "From the Beatles and Brian Epstein, thank you." Without fanfare, he was sent back to London. His brief moment in the sun was over. Nicol later described the transition as emotionally difficult, going from stadiums filled with screaming fans to the quiet of everyday life. "It was very strange," he said in later interviews. "Suddenly you're nobody again." After his Beatles stint, Nicol tried to capitalize on his fame by forming his own group, the Shubdubs, but the band had limited success. He later worked as a drummer for various artists and toured internationally, including in Sweden and Mexico. However, by the late 1960s, his career had declined, and he gradually faded from the public eye. In the 1970s, Nicol briefly moved into construction and business ventures. Reports suggest he later settled in Mexico, leading a quiet and reclusive life away from fame. His son, Howard Nicol, later confirmed that Jimmie preferred privacy and did not wish to relive his fleeting time with the Beatles. Legacy Jimmie Nicol remains one of rock history's most fascinating what-if stories, the man who was a Beatle for 10 days. His professionalism helped keep the band's momentum at a critical time. And his grace under pressure earned him the respect of Lennon, McCartney, and Harrison. Though often overlooked in Beatles lore, his story captures the surreal intensity of 1960s fame and the fragile boundary between obscurity and legend. As of today, Nicol's later life remains shrouded in mystery. He avoided interviews and public appearances, seemingly content to let his brief moment in history stand on its own, a reminder that sometimes, even 10 days can define a lifetime. Life after the Beatles. Searching for rhythm again after returning to London in mid-June 1964, Jimmie Nicol found himself in an emotional void. The whirlwind of fame that had surrounded him vanished almost overnight, though he had experienced one of the most extraordinary bursts of fame imaginable. The return to everyday life proved difficult. For a brief period, he was still in the newspapers. Reporters wanted to know what it had been like to be the fifth Beatle.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching.